The north is cold and full of whispers.
The Dornish sun beat down on 7 fresh graves. Vultures circled overhead, drawn by the scent of death that still clung to the Tower of Joy. Eddard Stark stood beside the cairns, his sword dawn resting against the largest stone. 6 of his companions had survived the fight against the Kingsguard. 6 men, all wounded, all exhausted, all wanting nothing more than to go home. But Ned couldn't go home yet. In his arms, wrapped in a blanket stained with his sister's blood, was an infant. The child didn't cry. Its gray eyes, stark eyes, stared up at Ned with unnerving focus for something so newly born. Howland Reed stood beside him, the only man small enough to have slipped past Arthur Dayne's guard. The only reason Ned was still breathing. "We should move," Howland said quietly. "The tower isn't safe. Dornish patrols, bandits, Targaryen loyalists, any of them could find us." Ned nodded. They'd ride for Starfall first, return dawn to House Dayne, then figure out how to smuggle a Targaryen infant past Robert Baratheon's eyes. The new king had already proven his hatred for dragon spawn. Rhaegar's other children had been presented to him wrapped in crimson Lannister cloaks, their skulls crushed, their bodies broken. Robert had approved, had called it justice. What would Robert call this child, this son of Rhaegar and Lyanna? Ned looked down at the baby again. Jon, he'd decided to name him. Jon, after Jon Arryn, the man who'd raised them both. A northern name for a child with dragon's blood. "Promise me, Ned." Lyanna's final words echoed in his mind. She'd been dying, her bed soaked with birthing blood, her hand gripping his with surprising strength. "Promise me you'll protect him. Promise me." He'd sworn on everything he held sacred that he would keep her son safe. The question was how. They rode south through the Red Mountains, taking the old smugglers' paths that Howland knew from his time in Dorne. The land was hostile, red rock and scorpions and heat that made armor unbearable. They moved slowly, carefully, watching for threats. The threat found them 3 days from Starfall. Ned saw the dust cloud first, rising from the road ahead. Too much dust for a merchant caravan, too organized for bandits. He called a halt, hand going to his sword. "Soldiers," one of his men said. "At least 200. "Dornish?" Howland asked. "No." The man squinted. "Those are Lannister banners, crimson and gold." Ned's blood went cold. What were Lannisters doing in Dorne? The war was over. Aerys was dead, his children dead, the rebellion won. There was no reason for a Lannister army to be this far south unless... At their head rode a man Ned recognized immediately. Tywin Lannister, Lord of Casterly Rock. The man who'd sacked King's Landing and presented Robert with the corpses of Rhaegar's legitimate children. Tywin reined in his destrier 20 feet from Ned's position. His green eyes swept over the small group of wounded Northmen, lingered on the bundle in Ned's arms, then fixed on Ned's face. "Lord Stark," Tywin said. His voice was measured, controlled, showing neither surprise nor hostility. "How fortuitous. I was hoping we'd meet before you reached civilization. Stand aside. The war is over when I say it's over." Tywin dismounted with fluid grace despite his age. "What's in the bundle, Ned?" "Nothing that concerns you." "I disagree." Tywin walked closer, and 200 Lannister soldiers shifted subtly, hands moving toward weapons. Rhaegar Targaryen died at the Trident. Elia Targaryen died in King's Landing. But Lyanna died here, in that tower behind you. Alone. Or not alone? "We found her dead, Lord Lannister. We buried her with honor. There's nothing more to tell." "I'm sure you did." Tywin's eyes never left the bundle in Ned's arms. "And the child?" The silence stretched. Ned could hear his own heartbeat, could feel the weight of the infant in his arms, could see his 6 wounded companions calculating odds they couldn't possibly win. "The child is mine," Ned said finally. "The lie tasted like ashes. A bastard, born of a woman I knew during the war." The sound was cold and utterly without humor. Ned Stark, the most honorable man in Westeros, fathering a bastard on a woman in Dorne while his new bride waits in Winterfell? No. Try again. "It's the truth. It's a lie, and a poor one." Tywin stopped 5 feet away. "Robert Baratheon is king. He built his throne on Targaryen skulls. What do you think he'll do when he discovers you're smuggling the last dragon wolf out of Dorne?" Ned's grip tightened on his sword. "Jon, this child is innocent. Lyanna made me promise to protect him. Lyanna is dead. Promises made to corpses are worth less than the stones that mark them. I will not let you harm him. Harm him? Ned, I'm offering to save him. And you? Ned stared. What? You have 6 wounded men. I have 200. If we fight, you all die. So does the child. Tywin gestured to the infant. But there's another option, one that keeps everyone alive. What option? The child comes with me, to Casterly Rock, as my ward. Tywin's voice was perfectly calm, as if discussing trade agreements rather than the fate of a kingdom. Officially, he'll be presented as the bastard son of a distant Lannister cousin and a northern common woman. I'll raise him, educate him, train him in the ways of power. And you, Ned, will go home to Winterfell. You'll tell Robert that Lyanna died alone, that you found no child, that the Targaryen line is extinct. You're mad. Why would you do this? Because, Ned, you've handed me the most valuable insurance policy in Westeros. Tywin's green eyes gleamed. A dragon, a wolf, a living sword hanging over Robert's head. Kings come and go, but leverage is eternal. Howland Reed spoke up. And if we refuse, after I've killed all of you, I'd prefer not to waste good northern blood, but I will if necessary. Tywin's voice never rose above conversational level. The child dies either way if Robert discovers him. With me, he lives. He thrives. He becomes something greater than a fugitive prince hiding in Essos. Ned looked down at the baby in his arms. Jon, he would always think of him as Jon, stared back with those stark gray eyes. Lyanna's eyes. The last piece of his sister left in the world. What guarantee do I have that you won't harm him? Dead, the boy is worthless. Alive and trained, he's leverage against Robert, against the Targaryens in Essos, against anyone who threatens Lannister interests. I don't squander valuable assets, Ned. I invest in them. Will be permanent and substantial, but that's better than watching Robert Baratheon crush an infant's skull against a wall. Tywin extended his hand. Give me the child. Walk away. Live with your honor intact and your promise to Lyanna fulfilled. The boy will be safe at Casterly Rock, safer than anywhere else in Westeros. Ned's hands trembled. Everything he believed in, everything he'd fought for, came down to this moment. Honor demanded he refuse. Love demanded he accept. Duty pulled him in both directions until he thought he might tear apart. I want to see him when he's older. I want proof he's alive and well. When he turns 6, you may visit Casterly Rock. Once, after that, he's mine, completely. Tywin's hand remained extended. Those are the terms. Take them or draw your sword. But decide now. Ned looked at his companions, wounded, exhausted, loyal unto death, but knowing death was exactly what they'd find if they fought. He looked at Howland Reed, whose small nod said what words couldn't. This is the only way. He looked at Jon, at Lyanna's son, at the child he'd promised to protect. Lyanna, he whispered, forgive me. He placed the infant in Tywin Lannister's arms. Tywin examined the baby with the same cold appraisal he might give a newly acquired mine. Stark features. Good. No one will suspect dragon blood. What did you name him? Jon. Ned's voice cracked. Jon Snow. Jon Hill, I think. The Westerland's bastard name. More appropriate for a child being raised at the Rock. Tywin turned to his men. Prepare a wet nurse. The boy travels with us. Wait. Ned stepped forward. If you betray this arrangement, if you reveal his identity to Robert, the North and the West go to war, mutually assured destruction. That's the guarantee. Tywin smiled. Finally, you're thinking like a player instead of a pawn. Yes, Ned, mutually assured destruction. He mounted his horse, Jon cradled carefully in one arm, returned to Winterfell. Tell Robert you found Lyanna dead and alone. Mourn her, bury her in the crypts, and never speak of this again. When can I see him? You said when he turns 6. I lied. You'll never see him again. It's cleaner that way, safer for everyone. Tywin kicked his horse into motion. But I'll send ravens, occasional updates, so you'll know he lives. That will have to be enough. Tywin, Ned's voice broke. He's my nephew, my blood. Tywin looked back over his shoulder. No, Lord Stark, he's my weapon. And you gave him to me. The Lannister force rode west, taking the infant into the dust and distance. Ned stood frozen, watching until they disappeared completely. Then his legs gave out and he fell to his knees in the Dornish dirt. Howland Reed knelt beside him. You saved his life. I damned his soul. Ned's hands shook. Lyanna told me to protect him. She didn't tell me to give him to the man who murdered Rhaegar's other children. Tywin won't harm him. You heard the logic. The boy is valuable alive, worthless dead. And I traded him like a sack of grain. Ned buried his face in his hands. What have I done? Ned carried Dawn to Starfall first, returned Arthur Dayne's sword to his grieving sister, then turned north. The journey took months. Every mile, Ned felt the weight of his choice pressing down on him. When he finally reached Winterfell, Catelyn was waiting with their infant son Robb in her arms. She looked at Ned's face and knew something had broken inside him. "Where's the child?" she asked quietly. "The rumor said you found a Stark ward in Dorne." There was no ward, false hope, nothing more. Ned couldn't meet her eyes. Lyanna died alone. He walked past her to the Godswood and knelt before the heart tree. He prayed for forgiveness. He prayed that Lyanna's spirit would understand why he'd made the choice he had. The gods didn't answer. They never did. The years that followed were a special kind of torture. True to his word, Tywin sent occasional ravens, never more than once a year, never more than a single line. The boy thrives. The boy walks, speaks, learns quickly. The boy is healthy, sharp-minded, useful. Each raven was a knife in Ned's heart. Jon was alive. Jon was growing. Jon was becoming something Ned would never see, never know, never be able to guide or protect or love. Catelyn noticed Ned's increasing rigidity, the way he held himself to impossible standards of honor, never bending, never compromising. She thought it was grief for Lyanna. She was partially right. But the real grief was for the choice he'd made, the nephew he'd traded, the promise he'd broken in order to keep. Ned threw himself into raising Robb, Sansa, Arya, Bran, and eventually Rickon with intensity that bordered on obsession. He taught them honor, duty, the Northern way. He taught them everything he wished he could have taught Jon. In the 5th year after the rebellion, Ned rode to King's Landing for the Greyjoy Rebellion. Robert was king, fat and drunk and miserable in his marriage. They fought the Ironborn together, won together, parted as friends. Robert asked about Lyanna. Always asked about Lyanna. "Do you think about her still?" Robert asked one night, deep in his cups. "Every day," Ned said. "It wasn't a lie. I'd have killed Rhaegar 1,000 times for taking her from me." Robert's face twisted with old rage. "If there'd been any spawn of his left alive, I'd have crushed their skulls myself, made sure the dragon line died forever." Ned said nothing. What could he say? The dragon line lived, thrived, grew strong at Casterly Rock under Tywin's cold tutelage. And Ned had made it possible. He avoided King's Landing after that, avoided Robert, avoided any situation that might expose the lie. He buried himself in Winterfell, in duty, in the daily governance of the North, and he prayed every single day that Jon would survive, that Tywin would keep his word, that somehow, impossibly, Lyanna would forgive him. At Casterly Rock, in a nursery overlooking the sunset sea, a wet nurse fed an infant who rarely cried. Tywin Lannister watched from the doorway, his face betraying nothing. "Shall I name him, my lord?" the wet nurse asked nervously. "He's already named, John Hill. Remember it. Use it. Forget his true parentage or I'll have your tongue." Tywin's voice was ice. "This child is a distant Lannister cousin's bastard, nothing more. Is that understood?" "Yes, my lord." Tywin approached the crib. The infant, Jon, looked up at him with those stark gray eyes, already calculating, already aware. "You're perfect," Tywin said quietly. "Stark coloring, Targaryen bone structure, and a gaze that already seems to understand cost. You'll be my greatest work, not my son, never my son, but my weapon, my insurance, my masterpiece." The baby didn't cry, didn't smile, simply watched. "I'll strip the North from you," Tywin continued, speaking more to himself than the infant. "Strip the sentiment, the honor, the weakness. I'll teach you to think like a Lannister, to calculate like a Lannister, to win like a Lannister, and when the time comes, when Robert Baratheon is dead and the throne sits empty, you'll take what's yours by right. With me at your side." He turned to leave, then paused. "Welcome to Casterly Rock, Jon Targaryen. Try not to disappoint me." The nursery door closed. The infant was alone with the wet nurse, and the sound of waves crashing against the rock's western face. And in the darkness of a Winterfell godswood, hundreds of miles north, Eddard Stark wept for the nephew he would never hold again. Year 285 AC, Jon Hill took his first steps at 14 months, early by any measure. Maester Crelin recorded it dutifully in the household ledger. The ward walked today, steady gait, no assistance required. Lord Tywin observed from the solar window, expressed satisfaction. Tywin had assigned Crelin specifically to oversee Jon's development. The maester was old, practical, utterly without sentiment, perfect for the task. He'd raised Lannister children before, knew what Tywin expected, and asked no questions about the dark-haired infant who looked nothing like any Lannister he'd ever seen. He learns words faster than expected, Crelin reported to Tywin in the 3rd year. At 2, he already commands 20 words. Most children manage half that. I want him literate before his 5th name day. My lord, that's quite aggressive. Do it. The lessons began. Jon learned his letters sitting on Crelin's knee, sounding out words from the histories of the great houses. Not children's stories, not songs, history, lineages, the rise and fall of dynasties. His first complete sentence, read aloud at age 3, Lord Tywin Lannister crushed the Rains and Tarbecks without mercy. If you make Lord Tywin angry, he burns your house down. Close enough. The actual lesson is, never show weakness, never tolerate insult, never let an enemy survive to plot revenge. Remember that. I will. Year 287 AC. At age 4, Jon encountered Tyrion Lannister for the first time. The dwarf, Tywin's despised son, had returned to the Rock between travels, seeking books from the library. He found Jon there instead, sitting cross-legged on the floor, reading a tome about the conquest of Dorne. Well, the mysterious ward. Tyrion peered down at the boy with undisguised curiosity. You read, then. How unusual for someone so young. Jon looked up. Maester Crelin says reading is the only way to learn from the dead. Wise man, Crelin. Though personally, I prefer learning from the living. They're more entertaining when they realize you've outwitted them. Tyrion gestured to the book. Heavy reading for a child. Most boys your age are playing with wooden swords. Wooden swords won't help me manage ledgers. Tyrion laughed, a genuine sound of delight. Manage ledgers? At 4? Gods, Tywin really is training you, isn't he? Tell me, do you know why you're here, Jon Hill? Lord Tywin says I have potential, that I can be useful to House Lannister if I apply myself. The truth is, you're Tywin's project, his latest attempt to create the perfect heir, since his actual children are so disappointing. Tyrion poured himself wine from a decanter. Jaime joined the Kingsguard, wasting the family line. Cersei is brilliant but vicious in ways even Tywin finds excessive. And me? Well, I'm a dwarf. Automatic disqualification from Tywin's grand plans. Jon set down his book. You're also the smartest person in this room right now. What makes you say that? You read more than anyone. Maester Crelin says people who read learn from everyone's mistakes. People who don't read only learn from their own. I'm starting to like you, Jon Hill. Tyrion raised his cup. To useful bastards and disappointing sons, may we both survive our purpose. Jon didn't have wine, but he raised his water cup anyway. They touched cups solemnly, and a strange friendship was born. Tyrion would visit the Rock occasionally over the years, and he always sought Jon out. They'd talk about books, about politics, about the Game of Thrones that most people didn't even know they were playing. Remember this, Tyrion told Jon during one visit when the boy was 7. The lords of Westeros see us as lesser. You're a bastard. I'm a dwarf they think we're safe to ignore. That's our advantage. Never correct them. Let them underestimate you until the moment you destroy them. Tyrion became an unofficial tutor, teaching lessons Crelin couldn't. How to read people, how to manipulate perceptions, how to turn disadvantaged into weapon. Year 290 AC. Jon turned 7. Tywin decided it was time for the truth. They met in Tywin's solar, a room Jon had only entered twice before. The Lord of Casterly Rock sat behind his desk, reviewing a contract he didn't look up as Jon entered. Sit. His feet didn't quite touch the floor yet. Tywin continued reading for a full minute, making Jon wait. Finally, he set the contract aside and fixed those cold green eyes on the boy. You're 7 years old. You read and write better than most knights. You understand basic mathematics. You've memorized the major houses and their sigils. You can recite the Lannister lineage back 6 generations. All of this is satisfactory, but now it's time for you to understand why you're here. I thought I was here because you took me as a ward. A Lannister cousin's bastard. That's the lie we tell others. The truth is different. Tywin stood, walked to the window overlooking the western sea. Your mother was Lyanna Stark. Your father was Rhaegar Targaryen. You are the legitimate son of the crown prince and a High Lord's daughter. By rights of blood, you should sit the Iron Throne. Jon's breath caught. He'd heard stories of the rebellion, of the Targaryen fall, of Robert Baratheon's victory. But this? Why tell me now? Because lies work best when they're based on truth. You needed to believe you were nobody until you were old enough to understand what being somebody actually means. Tywin turned back to face him. You are Aegon Targaryen, though we'll never call you that publicly. Jon Hill is your mask. Wear it. Perfect it. But never forget what lies beneath. And Eddard Stark? He's not my father. Your uncle. He found you at the Tower of Joy where your mother died giving birth. He tried to smuggle you north, hide you from Robert. I intercepted him and made a bargain. Your life in exchange for Stark's submission. He chose wisely. Jon processed this with the same careful calculation he applied to ledgers. Does this change my training? Tywin's smile was arctic. No, it makes it more important. You're not just a bastard I'm raising for political advantage. You're the rightful heir to the 7 kingdoms. That means every lesson matters. Every skill you master brings you closer to claiming what's yours. And every failure is unacceptable. I understand. Do you? Because most 7-year-olds would weep to learn their entire identity is a lie. Most 7-year-olds can't do compound interest calculations in their heads. Jon's voice was steady. I am whoever you need me to be. If that's Jon Hill today and Aegon Targaryen tomorrow, I'll wear both names equally well. Tywin studied him for a long moment. Remarkable. You're not my son, but you may be my greatest work. Don't disappoint me. I won't. That night, Jon lay awake in his chambers, staring at the ceiling. He was a Targaryen, a prince, the rightful king. He felt nothing. No anger at Ned for trading him, no grief for parents he'd never known, no burning desire to claim a throne he'd never seen. Tywin had taught him well. Emotion was weakness, identity was performance, power was the only currency that mattered. Jon Hill, the bastard ward, rolled over and went to sleep. Aegon Targaryen could wait. Year 294 AC. By age 11, Jon had surpassed every expectation. He managed Casterly Rock's western mines, reviewing ledgers and production reports that grown stewards struggled with. He spoke High Valyrian fluently, taught by a maester Tywin had imported from the Citadel specifically for that purpose. He read legal contracts, caught errors trained lawyers missed, negotiated with miners like someone 3 times his age. Kevin Lannister, Tywin's brother, remained skeptical. He's 11, Tywin. You're trusting him with the gold mines? The foundation of our wealth? The boy wore crimson and gold, stood straight-backed despite his youth, and spoke with absolute confidence. The western mine shows a 12% yield decline over 6 months. The foreman blames exhausted veins. Jon spread ledgers across the table. But the eastern mine, identical geology, same depth, same equipment, has increased yield by 8% in the same period. The difference isn't geological, it's human. A foreman shifted uncomfortably. My lord, the western mine has always been temperamental. The recent decline correlates exactly with your appointment as foreman. Jon slid a comparison ledger across. The eastern mine's foreman reports every ounce extracted. You report 12% less than the actual yield, which means you're skimming, stealing from House Lannister. Silence. Jon's gray eyes were cold. Replace him. Audit the books going back 18 months. Recover what was stolen. If he resists, Lord Tywin has authorized me to confiscate his property and exile his family. Understood? The foreman crumbled. My lord, I can explain. The numbers explain everything. Jon turned to Kavan. Was there anything else, uncle? Kavan stared at his nephew's protege, this dark-haired boy who thought and spoke like Tywin at 60 rather than a child at 11. No, nothing else. Later, on the battlements, Tywin and Jon walked alone. You handled that well, cold, precise. No mercy. He stole from us, mercy would be wasted. Exactly. Tywin stopped, looked out over the sea. I have news. Robert Baratheon is planning a royal progress through the Westerlands. He'll arrive within the month. Jon's expression didn't change. And you're sending me away. A diplomatic mission. You'll foster with the Martells for a season. Because Robert can't see me. You look too much like Ned Stark. Dark hair, Gray eyes, long northern face. Better to remove the variable. Tywin's voice was matter-of-fact. I'll tell Robert you're learning to negotiate with vipers. It's not a lie. The Martells are dangerous, and you'll need to manage them eventually when you take the throne. And if Robert asks why a ward is worth diplomatic training, I'll tell him you have potential, that I invest in useful assets. Robert understands power, even if he squanders his own. He won't question it. When do I leave? Tomorrow at dawn. Oberyn Martell expects you. He's been instructed to teach you the Dornish way of politics, which is to say, how to smile while poisoning your enemies. A useful skill. You are not my son, but you are my greatest work. Everything I've built, everything House Lannister represents, will culminate in you. Do you understand what that means? It means I can't fail. It means you won't, because I've spent 11 years making sure failure isn't in your nature. Tywin's grip tightened slightly. Robert Baratheon built his kingdom on a lie. Joffrey Baratheon is not his son. Cersei has been fucking Jaime since they were children in this very castle. The entire royal line is fraudulent. The most surprise he'd shown in years. You know, I've known for years, and I've done nothing. Do you know why? Because you need the chaos. Because chaos is a ladder, Jon. And you are my ladder. When Robert dies, and he will die, probably sooner rather than later given his drinking, when Joffrey's secret is revealed, when the realm tears itself apart over succession, you will step forward, not as Jon Hill, as Aegon Targaryen, 6th of his name, rightful heir to the Iron Throne, and I will be at your side, making sure you claim what's yours. And if I refuse? Tywin's smile was colder than winter. Then you die, and I find another ladder. But you won't refuse, because I've spent 11 years teaching you that power is the only thing worth having, and you're too intelligent to waste what you've become. Jon was quiet for a moment, calculating. What do you want me to do in Dorne? Learn, watch, survive, and when I summon you back, be ready to claim your throne. Year 298 AC, Jon was 14, tall for his age, with the lean build of someone who trained daily but preferred strategy to brute combat. His dark hair was cut short in Lannister fashion. His gray eyes held the same cold appraisal Tywin's green ones did. He stood in Sunspear's water gardens, listening to Oberyn Martell describe 17 different poisons and their symptoms. This one causes the bowels to empty completely before death. Undignified but effective. Oberyn gestured to a flower. This one paralyzes the lungs. Looks like natural failure. Impossible to prove murder. Jon committed each to memory. And antidotes? For some, yes. For others, death is the only cure once administered. Oberyn studied the boy with undisguised interest. You're not like other Lannisters, Jon Hill. You listen more than you speak. Most children your age would be bragging about their house's power. You just absorb information like a sponge. Bragging is for people who need validation. I need knowledge. Spoken like Tywin himself. Tell me, does he beat his lessons into you? Or are you naturally this calculating? Jon considered the question. Lord Tywin doesn't need to beat anything into me. He simply shows me cause and effect. If I learn, I gain power. If I fail, I lose it. The motivation is built into the system. What do they think of Tywin's methods? The question was a trap. Oberyn was testing him, seeing if the official story held. My father was a Lannister cousin who died young. My mother was northern-born, died in childbirth. I never knew either. Lord Tywin is the only parent I've had. Jon's voice was perfectly neutral. Why do you ask? Because you have Stark written all over your face. Dark coloring, gray eyes, long features, yet you speak and think like pure Lannister. It's a fascinating contradiction. My mother's blood breeds true, apparently, but blood is just blood. What matters is what you do with it. Oberyn laughed. Oh, I like you, boy. You'll go far. Probably straight to the top if Tywin has his way. A raven arrived from King's Landing 2 weeks later. Tywin's handwriting was precise, controlled. Return to King's Landing. Robert has made me hand. The game begins. -T. Jon showed the message to Oberyn. Your master summons. Will you go running? Lord Tywin isn't my master. He's my investor. And yes, I'll return. The lessons here are complete. I was just about to teach you about the uses of manticore venom. I can't read about the games being played in King's Landing right now. Jon rolled the message carefully. Thank you for your hospitality, Prince Oberyn. Perhaps we'll meet again when I sit the throne. Oberyn's smile was sharp. When, not if. Tywin has trained you well. Safe travels, Jon Hill, or whoever you really are. Jon left Dorne the next morning. By the time he reached King's Landing 3 weeks later, the capital was already buzzing with the news. Tywin Lannister was Hand of the King again. The realm's real power had returned, and with him came a 14-year-old ward who looked like a Stark, fought like a Lannister, and had blood that could reshape the Seven Kingdoms. Jon entered the Red Keep for the first time in his life and smiled. The game had begun. Winterfell had never felt colder. Eddard Stark stood in the Godswood, his breath misting in the frigid air, staring at the heart tree's face carved into ancient weirwood. 15 years. 15 years since he'd handed his infant nephew to Tywin Lannister and watched the Lannister force ride west with Lyanna's son. The Ravens had stopped coming 3 years ago. No more terse updates, no more single-line confirmations that Jon lived. Just silence. Catelyn found him there as dawn broke. "You've been here all night," she said quietly, wrapping her cloak tighter against the cold. "I was praying." For what? Ned couldn't answer. What could he say? That he prayed for a nephew she didn't know existed? That he prayed Tywin Lannister would keep a 15-year-old bargain? That he prayed the child he traded for peace would somehow forgive him? "Robert is coming north," Catelyn continued when Ned didn't respond. "The rider arrived yesterday. The king is traveling to Winterfell with the full royal household. He'll be here within the month." Ned's stomach clenched. Did the message say why? "Robert needs a new hand. He's coming to ask you." The world tilted. Jon Arryn dead. The man who'd raised Ned and Robert both, who'd been Hand of the King for 15 years, who'd kept Robert's worst impulses in check, dead. And Robert wanted Ned to replace him. "I can't go to King's Landing." Catelyn looked surprised. "You've refused Robert before, but this is different. He's coming himself to ask. If you refuse him to his face, I can't." Ned's voice was sharp. Too sharp, he softened it. "The North needs me here. Winter is coming. We have to prepare. And Robert is your oldest friend. He needs you, Ned." But Ned couldn't go to King's Landing because King's Landing meant proximity to Tywin Lannister. Meant questions about the past. Meant risking the fragile lie that had kept Jon alive for 15 years. "I'll consider it," Ned said finally. "When Robert arrives, we'll discuss it." Robert Baratheon's royal progress was an exercise in excess. 300 riders, wagons loaded with supplies. The queen and her children in gilded carriages. They descended on Winterfell like a golden plague, disrupting the quiet northern routines with southern noise and spectacle. Ned stood in the courtyard as Robert dismounted. The king had grown fat. Massively, grotesquely fat. His face was red from drinking and exertion, but when he saw Ned, his expression lit up with genuine affection. "Ned, you haven't changed at all, you grim northern bastard." Robert pulled him into a crushing embrace. Still serious. Still honorable. "Gods, it's good to see you. Your Grace, welcome to Winterfell." "None of that, Your Grace. Horse shit. I'm Robert. Same as I was at the Eyrie. Same as I was at the Trident. Titles don't change friendship." Robert's smile faded slightly. "I need you, Ned. Jon Arryn is dead. Someone poisoned him, I think. Maybe the Lannisters, maybe someone else. I don't know who to trust in that viper pit of a capital. I need someone honest, someone honorable. I need you as my hand." The request hit like a war hammer. Ned had known it was coming, but hearing Robert say it aloud made it real. "Robert, we'll talk after the feast tonight." Robert clapped him on the shoulder. "I also wanted to see the crypts. Pay my respects to Lyanna. Will you take me?" Of course. They descended into the darkness beneath Winterfell, torches casting shadows on the stone faces of dead Starks. Robert stood before Lyanna's statue for a long time, saying nothing. "I still see her face," Robert said finally, "in my dreams. Still hear her laugh. 15 years, Ned, and I can't let her go." "I know. Do you? Do you dream of her too?" Every night, Ned wanted to say. "I dream of her dying. Dream of the promise I made and broke. Dream of the son I gave away to keep him alive." "Yes," was all he said. "I'd have killed Rhaegar 1,000 times for taking her from me." Robert's voice was thick with old rage. "If there'd been any spawn of his left alive, I'd have crushed their skulls myself. Made sure the dragon line died forever." Ned said nothing. What could he say? The dragon line lived, thrived, grew strong at Casterly Rock under Tywin's tutelage, and Ned had made it possible. "Come on," Robert said, turning away from the statue. "Let's drink. I brought wine from the arbor. We'll toast Lyanna properly." They drank. Robert drank more. He always drank more. The feast that night was a spectacle Winterfell hadn't seen in years. The great hall blazed with torches and filled with laughter as northern and southern households mixed uneasily. Robert sat at the high table, already deep in his cups, regaling Ned with stories of battles past. Ned barely heard him. His eyes kept drifting to the royal children. Joffrey, the crown prince, was 12 years old with golden hair and green eyes. Lannister coloring, not Baratheon. Myrcella and Tommen younger, equally blonde. None of them looked like Robert. None of them had the dark Baratheon hair that supposedly bred true. Jon had that dark hair. Stark dark, but close enough to Baratheon coloring that no one would question it if they didn't look too closely. Gods. Was he comparing Robert's bastard children to Robert's legitimate ones and finding the legitimate ones wanting? What kind of madness was this? "Ned," Robert's voice cut through his thoughts. "You're not listening. I asked what you think about my offer. Will you be my hand?" The hall quieted. Everyone waited for the answer. Ned thought about Jon at Casterly Rock, thought about Tywin's leverage, thought about the debt House Stark owed House Lannister, thought about the promise to Lyanna that he'd kept in the worst way possible. "Give me time to consider it, Your Grace. This is not a decision to make lightly." Of course. Think on it." "But Ned," Robert leaned closer, voice dropping, "I need you. The Lannisters are circling like wolves. Cersei barely hides her contempt. Tywin is back his hand temporarily, but I don't trust him. He's too clever, too ruthless. I need someone who actually gives a damn about the realm, not just their own power." Tywin was hand again. The words sent ice through Ned's veins. When did that happen? 2 months ago. After Jon Arryn died, Tywin was visiting King's Landing, first time in years, and I asked him to step in until I could find someone permanent. He agreed, reluctantly. The man runs the kingdom better than I ever could, but I can't shake the feeling he's playing a game I can't see. Tywin was hand, which meant Jon was in King's Landing, had to be. Tywin wouldn't leave his greatest asset at Casterly Rock when the real power was in the capital. "I'll need to think about this," Ned said carefully. "Think quickly. I'm heading back south in 2 weeks. I need your answer before then." Ned barely slept that night. He paced his chambers, mind churning. If he went to King's Landing as hand, he'd be in proximity to Tywin and Jon. Dangerous, risky. The secret could come out. Robert could discover everything. But if he refused, Robert would be hurt, insulted, and the debt to House Lannister would remain unpaid, hanging over the north like a sword. Catelyn found him at dawn, still pacing. "You're going to accept," she said. "It wasn't a question. I don't know yet. You're too honorable to refuse your king when he needs you, and you love Robert too much to say no." She moved closer. "But something else is bothering you. Something about the Lannisters. About Tywin specifically. What is it, Ned?" He couldn't tell her. Could never tell her the lie had calcified over 15 years into something hard and impenetrable. Nothing. Just politics. But she'd learned over 15 years that Ned Stark kept his secrets locked tight. 3 days later, Ned gave Robert his answer. He would go to King's Landing, would serve as Hand of the King. The decision felt like doom settling over his shoulders. The journey south took a month and a half. Robert's royal progress moved slowly, stopping at every major town to feast and drink and hunt. Ned rode in near constant anxiety, dreading the moment they'd reach King's Landing. When the capital finally appeared on the horizon, the red keep rising from Aegon's high hill, the great city sprawling around it, Ned felt his chest tighten. Somewhere in that city was Jon, 15 years old now, raised by Tywin Lannister, shaped into something Ned wouldn't recognize. They entered through the King's Gate. The streets were packed with small folk cheering their king's return. Robert waved and smiled, playing the role despite his obvious exhaustion. Ned followed, his eyes scanning the crowds as if he might somehow spot Jon among the thousands of faces. The Red Keep was organized chaos. Servants rushed to prepare chambers for the royal household. Tywin Lannister waited in the throne room, standing at the base of the Iron Throne with his hands clasped behind his back. He looked exactly as Ned remembered. Cold, composed, absolutely in control. His green eyes swept over the arriving party with calculated appraisal. "Your Grace," Tywin said, bowing precisely. "Welcome home. This place would fall apart without you." Robert gestured broadly. "You've met Ned Stark, my new hand. Well, old hand, new again. You know what I mean. Lord Stark, Tywin's eyes met Ned's. "We've met. The Tower of Joy, wasn't it? 15 years ago." The words were a knife blade, sharp and precise. Ned forced his expression to remain neutral. 15 years. Yes. A lot has changed since then. You've raised a family in the north. I've raised investments in the west. Tywin's smile was glacial. I'm sure we'll have much to discuss about the intervening years. But first, let me show you to the Tower of the Hand. I've kept it ready for you. The Tower of the Hand was a fortress within the Red Keep, connected to the main castle by a covered bridge. Ned's chambers were on the top floor, with windows overlooking the city. He was unpacking when there was a knock. Enter. The door opened. A young man stepped inside. Ned's breath stopped. Dark hair, gray eyes, long stark face, but taller than Ned had been at that age, with a lean build and perfect posture. He wore crimson and gold, Lannister colors, and carried himself with absolute confidence. Jon, but not Jon as Ned had imagined, not a boy waiting to be rescued, not a frightened child shaped by cruel masters. This was someone else entirely. "Lord Stark," the young man said. His voice was controlled, neutral, showing nothing. "I'm Jon Hill. Lord Tywin sent me to assist with your transition as Hand. I manage several administrative functions and can help orient you to the Red Keep's operations." Couldn't breathe. He stared at his nephew, his sister's son, the child he'd handed to Tywin Lannister 15 years ago, and saw a stranger. "Jon," he finally managed. "Yes, my lord. Is there something specific you need?" No recognition, no emotion, just professional courtesy. You've grown. Shall I review the small council's current projects, or would you prefer to settle in first? Ned's voice cracked. Do you remember Winterfell? Lord Tywin says I was brought to Casterly Rock as a ward when I was less than a year old. Jon's expression remained perfectly neutral. Was there something else, Lord Stark? Lord Tywin's schedule is quite full. Jon, I need you to understand. Understand what, my lord? The coldness in that voice. The complete absence of connection. Ned had known this moment would be hard, but he hadn't anticipated this. Hadn't expected to face his nephew and find nothing. No anger, no curiosity, just emptiness. Nothing, Ned said finally. Thank you for your offer to help. I'll summon you if I need assistance. As you wish. Jon bowed precisely, too precisely like Tywin himself, and left. Ned collapsed into a chair. The boy he'd saved was gone. In his place was a Lannister in all but name, shaped by Tywin's cold pragmatism into a perfect instrument. What had he done? Over the following days, Ned saw Jon regularly in the Red Keep. The boy, no, the young man, moved through the castle with effortless competence. He attended small council meetings as Tywin's assistant, taking notes, reviewing ledgers, occasionally offering insights that impressed even the most experienced counselors. Tyrion Lannister seemed particularly fond of him. The imp and Jon would talk in corners, sharing observations, sometimes laughing at private jokes, watching them together hurt in ways Ned couldn't articulate. Ned tried to approach Jon several times. Each attempt ended the same way: polite acknowledgement, professional distance, and a wall of ice between them. Finally, Ned couldn't take it anymore. He waited outside Jon's chambers one evening and intercepted him. "Jon, please, we need to talk." Jon looked at him with those stark gray eyes and showed nothing. "About what, Lord Stark? About who you are. About what happened 15 years ago. About," Ned's voice broke, "about your mother." Something flickered in Jon's expression, just for a moment. Then it was gone. "Come inside." Jon's chambers were sparse. A bed, a desk covered in ledgers and books, a single window overlooking the city. No decorations, no personal touches, just functionality. Jon closed the door and turned to face Ned. "You want to talk about Lyanna Stark? Fine. What about her?" "She was my sister. She died giving birth to you. Her last words were, 'Promise me, Ned.' She made me swear to protect you. And you did. You gave me to Tywin Lannister, the man who ordered the deaths of Rhaegar's other children, the man who sacked King's Landing and presented infant corpses to Robert Baratheon." Jon's voice was perfectly controlled. "If that's protection, I'd hate to see abandonment. I didn't abandon you, I saved you. You traded me, there's a difference." Jon moved to the window, looked out over the darkening city. Do you want absolution, Lord Stark? Is that why you're here? You want me to say I understand, that I forgive you, that you made the hard choice in an impossible situation? Robert would have killed you. Tywin was the only option. I know. I've known since I was 7 years old when Tywin told me the truth about my parentage. Jon turned back. I know you gave me away to keep me alive. I know you thought it was the best decision. I know you probably agonized over it for 15 years. Then you understand. I understand that you chose survival over honor, that when it came down to it, your precious northern honor meant less than keeping Robert's friendship. And I don't blame you for that. I just don't respect you for it. The words hit like physical blows. Jon, I was trying to keep my promise to your mother. Lyanna Stark is a name to me, nothing more. I never knew her. Never knew Rhaegar either. I don't mourn them. I don't honor their memory. I don't feel anything when I think about them except mild curiosity about genetics. Jon's gray eyes were ice. The only parent I've ever had is Tywin Lannister. He's the one who taught me to read, to think, to survive. He's the one who invested in me when I was worthless. He's the one who made me valuable. He made you into a weapon. Good. Weapons don't get hurt. Weapons don't feel loss. Weapons survive. Jon moved to the door, opened it. If you need to speak to me about small council business, I'm available during working hours. If you need to assuage your guilt about the past, find a septa. I'm not interested. Jon. My name is Jon Hill when others are listening. When we're alone, you can call me what Tywin calls me, the investment. Because that's all I am, all I've ever been, all I'll ever be. He gestured to the open door. Lord Stark, good evening. Ned left. Behind him, he heard the door close with quiet finality. He made it to his own chambers before the tears came. 15 years. 15 years he'd lived with the guilt, the hope that someday Jon would understand, that someday they could reconcile. But Jon wasn't interested in reconciliation. Jon was Tywin's creature now, shaped by cold pragmatism and ruthless calculation. The boy Ned had tried to save was dead. In his place was something harder, something that couldn't be reached. Catelyn found him in the God's Wood the next morning, a small weirwood sapling in a garden within the Red Keep, a concession to northern customs. You look like you haven't slept. I haven't. What happened? Ned wanted to tell her, wanted to confess everything, the bargain at the Tower of Joy, Jon's true parentage, the 15 years of lies, but the words wouldn't come. The habit of secrecy was too deeply ingrained. Nothing, just the weight of being hand. Jon's first small council meeting as an active participant rather than silent observer came 3 days after Ned's arrival. Tywin introduced him formally. Jon Hill has been managing several of my administrative portfolios. I'm elevating him to junior counselor status. He'll assist with financial review and strategic planning. Petyr Baelish, Littlefinger, the master of coin, smiled his oily smile. A ward promoted to counselor? How unprecedented. Jon has proven his value, unlike some counselors who talk more than they produce. Tywin's eyes locked on Littlefinger. I suggest we review the royal finances. Lord Baelish, your report? Littlefinger presented ledgers showing the crown's debt, 6 million gold dragons borrowed from various sources at varying interest rates. He spoke smoothly, confidently, explaining it away as normal cost of governance. Jon listened silently, reviewing the numbers. Then he spoke. The debt increased by 40% over 3 years. That's not normal governance cost. That's either massive expenditure or embezzlement. Which is it, Lord Baelish? Littlefinger's smile didn't falter. Increased expenditure naturally. The king's lifestyle costs approximately 200,000 dragons annually. That's documented. The increase in debt is 1.2 million dragons. Where did it go? Various expenses, Littlefinger said smoothly. Infrastructure, the city watch, diplomatic gifts. Every expense over 10,000 dragons, documented with receipts and signed approvals. Jon's voice was calm but unyielding. Can you provide that? Of course. Though it may take time to compile. You have 3 days. If the records aren't provided, I'll assume embezzlement and recommend a full audit with crown auditors instead of your own people. Jon turned to Tywin. With Lord Hand's permission, of course. Tywin's slight smile was approval. Permission granted. 3 days, Lord Baelish. Don't disappoint. As you wish. After the meeting, Littlefinger cornered Jon in a corridor. That was quite a performance, young Master Hill. Trying to impress your patron? No. Trying to determine if you're stealing from the crown. Are you? Littlefinger laughed. Directly? No. Indirectly? I prefer the term creative financial management. I move money from unnecessary areas to necessary ones. If some of it happens to flow through my enterprises along the way, well, that's just efficiency. And if I can prove it, then you'll have earned Tywin's pride and my enmity. Quite a trade. Littlefinger leaned closer. But let me offer some advice, boy. You're what, 14? 15? You think you understand how this game works because Tywin taught you ledgers and contracts. But the real game isn't about numbers. It's about people, secrets, leverage. And in that game, I've been playing longer than you've been alive. Jon met his eyes without flinching. Then let me offer you advice, Lord Baelish. I know you're embezzling. I know you're hiding it in shell companies and loanbacks. I know because I spent the last 2 weeks reviewing every crown transaction for the past 5 years. And I can prove it. Littlefinger's smile froze. But I'm not going to, Jon continued. Because you're useful. You have connections, information, skills Tywin values. So here's the arrangement. You stop embezzling. You provide accurate financial reports. You support Tywin's initiatives without question. And in return, I don't give him this. Jon produced a ledger from his doublet. A complete accounting of your theft. 700,000 dragons over 4 years. Names, dates, amounts. Littlefinger stared at the ledger. You're blackmailing me. I'm negotiating. There's a difference. Jon tucked the ledger away. Do we have an arrangement? What happens when Tywin isn't hand anymore? When you lose your protection, then you'd better hope I've gained enough power on my own to still be dangerous. But that's a future problem. Today's problem is simple. Work with us or hang. Choose. Littlefinger studied Jon for a long moment. Then he smiled. A real smile this time, sharp with genuine amusement. You're just like him. It's terrifying. Fine. You have my cooperation. For now. Good. The ledgers you owe the council, make sure they're accurate. I'll be checking. Jon walked away, leaving Littlefinger in the corridor. That night, he reported to Tywin and the Hand Solar. Littlefinger is contained. He'll cooperate. You blackmailed the Master of Coin on your first week as junior counselor. Efficient. Tywin poured 2 cups of wine. A rare gesture. Well done. He's still dangerous. Of course he is. That's why we keep him close. Never let an enemy out of your sight, Jon. Dead or controlled are the only safe states. Jon accepted the wine cup. They drank in comfortable silence. Eddard Stark has been trying to speak with me, Jon said after a moment. I know. I've been watching. What does he want? He wants me to forgive him for trading me to you. Will you? No. Forgiveness implies I was harmed. I wasn't. You gave me education, power, purpose. Ned gave me away to keep Robert's friendship. There's nothing to forgive because there's nothing I'd change. Tywin's smile was approving. Perfect answer. Keep Stark at distance. His guilt is useful. It makes him predictable. If you give him the reconciliation he craves, he becomes less controllable. Understood. There's one more thing. Tywin set down his cup. Varys the Spider approached me today. He knows about you, about your true parentage. Jon's expression didn't change. How much does he know? Everything. Varys knows everything. It's his function. But he hasn't told anyone, which means he's waiting to see which side benefits him more. Supporting your eventual claim or exposing you to Robert. What do you want me to do? Meet with him. Tonight. In his chambers. Hear what he offers. Report back. Tywin's eyes gleamed. The Spider is dangerous, but useful. Like Littlefinger, if we can control him, we control the information in this city. And information is power. Jon descended into the lower levels of the Red Keep that night, following directions Tywin had provided. Varys' chambers were hidden, accessible through passages most people didn't know existed. The Spider's room was small, sparse, dominated by a large desk covered in papers. Varys himself sat behind it, his powdered face arranged in a pleasant smile. Jon Snow, or should I say, Aegon Targaryen? Jon closed the door. Jon Hill is fine. Names are just tools. How very pragmatic. Tywin has trained you well. Varys gestured to a chair. Please sit. We have much to discuss. Jon sat. You know my parentage. Why haven't you told Robert? Because information is only valuable when deployed at the right moment. Telling Robert now would cause chaos, yes, but uncontrolled chaos. I prefer my chaos directed, purposeful. Varys steepled his fingers. I've known about you for years, since you were 7 and Tywin told you the truth. One of my little birds was cleaning the solar that day. She heard everything, and you've done nothing with that information for 8 years. Why? Because I wanted to see what Tywin would make of you, whether you'd become a weapon worth wielding or a failure worth exposing. Now I have my answer. Varys' smile widened. You're magnificent, cold, brilliant, utterly without sentiment, everything a king should be. I'm not a king, I'm a ward. When Robert dies, and he will die soon, his drinking guarantees it. When Joffrey's bastardy is exposed, when the realm tears itself apart over succession, you will step forward, and I will support you. Why? Because I serve the realm, and the realm needs stability. A strong king who understands power, who can make hard decisions, who won't be swayed by sentiment or honor or foolish idealism. You're that king. Varys leaned forward. But you have enemies. Targaryen loyalists in Essos who see you as Tywin's puppet. Baratheon supporters who'll fight any dragon restoration. Even Lannisters who fear you'll eclipse them. I can help you navigate those threats. In exchange, you remember who your allies were when you needed them most. You're offering me your spy network. I'm offering you survival. The difference is significant. Varys pulled out a rolled parchment. This is a list of Targaryen loyalists currently plotting against you. 15 names. They're planning to send assassins within the month. With this list, you can stop them. Without it, well, even Tywin's guards can't stop a faceless man. 15 names. Some he recognized from books about the rebellion. Others were unknown. What do you want in return? Your word that when you take the throne, you'll govern wisely. No mad king purges. No dragons burning cities. Just competent, pragmatic rule. Can you promise that? Jon met Varys' eyes. I can try, he reported to Tywin immediately. Varys is controlled, allied, not controlled. There's a difference. Jon handed over the list. He's giving us intelligence on Targaryen loyalist threats. In exchange, I promise to rule competently when I take the throne. And do you intend to keep that promise? I intend to survive. If ruling competently helps me survive, then yes. Jon paused. The assassins on this list, what do we do about them? We eliminate them before they eliminate you. Quietly. Efficiently. I'll handle it. Tywin studied the list. Varys is more valuable than I anticipated. Good work securing his alliance. He's playing his own game. He says he serves the realm, but Varys is no fool. Tywin set the list aside, which means we watch him carefully. Use his intelligence but verify it. Trust no one completely except me. Understood? Yes, my lord. Good. Now go. Tomorrow we have small council again. Littlefinger will present his corrected ledgers. I want you watching for any discrepancies he tries to slip past us. Jon left. In the corridor outside Tywin's solar, he encountered Ned Stark. They stared at each other. Working late, Ned said finally. Lord Tywin demands precision. Precision takes time. Jon, please, can we talk? Just for a moment. What do you want, Lord Stark? I want to know if there's any part of you that remembers you're Stark, that remembers your mother loved you, that remembers you come from the North, from honor, from... I don't remember the North. I was raised in the West. Tywin Lannister is the only father I've known. Casterly Rock is the only home I remember. And honor? Jon's voice was cold. Honor is a luxury for people who can afford it. I can't, I never could. That's Tywin talking, not you. I am what Tywin made me. There's no separation, no real Jon hiding under the surface waiting to be rescued. This is who I am. Jon stepped closer. You want me to be grateful you saved me? Fine. Thank you for handing me to the man who turned me into something useful instead of letting Robert crush my skull. Is that what you wanted to hear? I wanted you to know I tried, that I've thought about you every day for 15 years, that I never stopped caring. Then you should have tried harder. Jon's voice softened slightly. Lord Stark, I understand you feel guilty, but your guilt isn't my responsibility. You made your choice. I've made mine. We're on different paths now. Accept it. Then suffer, like I did when I was 7 and realized the uncle who gave me away would rather preserve a lie than claim me as family. Jon turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. When the time comes, when Robert dies, when the realm fractures, when I step forward to claim the throne, you'll have a choice. Support me or oppose me. Choose carefully, because unlike you, I don't value blood over pragmatism. If you're my enemy, I'll destroy you, uncle or not." He walked away, leaving Ned alone in the corridor. Ned stood there for a long time, staring at nothing. His nephew was gone. In his place was a stranger wearing Lyanna's eyes and Tywin's soul. And Ned had no one to blame but himself. The assassin came 3 weeks after Jon's conversation with Varys. Jon was ready. He'd spent those weeks reviewing the list of Targaryen loyalists, cross-referencing names with shipping manifests and travel records. Varys's intelligence was precise. A faceless man had been hired, arriving from Braavos on a merchant ship. The target, Jon Hill, Tywin's ward. Jon didn't sleep in his assigned chambers anymore. Instead, he rotated between 3 different rooms in the Red Keep, never establishing a pattern. He varied his routes through the castle. He kept a dagger under his pillow and another strapped to his calf. Tywin had taught him paranoia kept you alive. The night it happened, Jon was in a guest chamber on the 4th floor, reading reports by candlelight. Ghost? No, he couldn't call it that. He had no dire wolf. He was alone. The window opened silently. A figure slipped through, moving with inhuman grace. Black clothes, no face visible, a blade gleaming in the moonlight. Jon was already moving. He rolled from the bed as the assassin's blade struck where his head had been. The mattress split open, feathers exploding into the air. Jon came up with his dagger, putting the bed between himself and the killer. His heart hammered, but his mind was ice cold. Tywin's training. Fear is information. Use it. The faceless men don't come cheap, Jon said, watching the assassin circle. Who paid for me, Illyrio? Varys hedging his bets, or genuine Targaryen loyalists who think I'm Tywin's puppet? The assassin didn't answer. They never did. The killer lunged across the bed. Jon dodged left, slashed with his dagger, caught fabric but not flesh. The assassin recovered instantly, blade whistling toward Jon's throat. Jon dropped, swept the assassin's legs. The killer stumbled, barely, and Jon drove his dagger up into their stomach. The assassin gasped. Jon twisted the blade exactly as Tywin had taught him. Once you commit to killing, finish it. No mercy, no hesitation. The assassin collapsed. Jon held the dagger in place until the body stopped moving. Then he stood, breathing hard, covered in someone else's blood. The door burst open. Lannister guards rushed in, alerted by the noise. Behind them came Tywin, fully dressed despite the late hour. Tywin surveyed the scene, the dead assassin, Jon covered in blood but standing, the ruined bed, and nodded once. "Well done. Are you injured?" "No, my lord." "Good. Guards, remove the body. Quietly. I don't want this incident spreading through the castle." Tywin stepped closer to Jon, examined him. "You killed him yourself. No guards. No assistants. You taught me to never delegate murder. It creates witnesses." "I did." Tywin's smile was cold approval. "Go clean yourself, then meet me in my solar. We need to discuss accelerating our timeline." An hour later, Jon stood in Tywin's solar, washed and changed. The adrenaline had faded, leaving a strange calm. He'd killed before, bandits on the road to Dorne, a thief at Casterly Rock, but never someone specifically sent to murder him. "Varys was right," Tywin said, pouring wine. The Targaryen loyalists moved faster than expected. This was the faceless man he warned about. There will be others. Then we stop them. All of them. Jon accepted the wine cup. The list Varys provided. 15 names, we eliminate them before they can send more assassins. Already in progress. I've dispatched agents to Pentos, Braavos, Volantis. Within 3 months, the loyalists plotting against you will be dead or scattered. But that's a temporary solution. Tywin sat behind his desk. The permanent solution is taking the throne. Once you're crowned, the loyalists either bend the knee or face royal justice. Either way, they become irrelevant. Robert is still alive. Not for much longer. I've observed him closely these past months. The drinking, the eating, the whoring. He's killing himself. His heart won't last another year. Maybe less. Tywin's voice was matter-of-fact. When he dies, Joffrey becomes king. And the moment that happens, we expose his bastardy. The realm fractures, and you step forward with the truth of your parentage. Ned Stark knows the truth. He could expose it now, ruin everything. Ned Stark is paralyzed by guilt and honor. He won't expose you because that means admitting he lied to Robert for 15 years. It means betraying his king. It means destroying his own reputation. Tywin sipped his wine. Ned is predictable. His honor makes him weak. We use that. There's a problem. If we wait for Robert to die naturally, we lose control of the timeline. What if Joffrey consolidates power before we can expose him? What if Ned finds his spine and tells Robert the truth about me? Then we accelerate. But how? We can't assassinate Robert. Too obvious, and it would make Joffrey king immediately without the chaos we need. We need Robert to die in a way that seems natural, accidental. And Diarra knows. He asks a question. Jon was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then, Robert hunts constantly. It's his favorite activity besides drinking and whoring. Hunting accidents are common, tragic but believable. Tywin's eyes gleamed. Continue. We arrange a royal hunt. Robert insists on going after dangerous game boar, stag, something that can kill a man. We ensure he's drunk, ensure his guards are positioned poorly, ensure the kill shot is his to take. Jon met Tywin's eyes, and we ensure he fails. The boar gores him. The injury is mortal. He dies heroically doing what he loved. No one suspects murder because it looks like royal hubris. And in his final moments, Ned Stark tries to confess the truth about Joffrey. Robert dies before he can. The secret remains until we're ready to expose it on our terms. Tywin smiled. Elegant, brutal, effective. I approve. When? Soon. Within the month. I'll arrange the hunt. You'll attend as my representative. Ned will attend as hand. Robert will attend because he can't resist killing things. Tywin stood. And when the boar charges, you'll watch. You'll observe. You'll do nothing to save him. Can you do that? Jon thought about Robert Baratheon, the man who'd built his throne on killing Targaryens, the man who'd openly sworn to murder any dragon spawn that survived, the man who would crush Jon's skull without hesitation if he knew the truth. Yes, I can watch him die. Good, because the moment Robert's blood soaks into the Kingswood dirt, your life as Jon Hill ends, and your life as Aegon Targaryen begins. The royal hunt was organized 2 weeks later. Robert was ecstatic, a chance to kill something large and dangerous, to prove he was still the warrior who'd won the throne at the Trident. He invited his closest companions, Ned Stark, Barrister Selmy, Renly Baratheon, and a dozen lords. Tywin sent Jon as the Lannister representative. The hunting party rode into the Kingswood on a bright morning. Robert was already drinking, passing a wineskin and telling stories about hunts past. I killed a white hart once. 18 points. Magnificent beast! Took 3 arrows to bring it down. Robert's laughter boomed. Today we'll find something even better. Boar, maybe. I haven't killed a good boar in years. Ned rode beside Jon, his face troubled. They hadn't spoken since their confrontation, but proximity forced acknowledgement. You don't hunt much, do you? Ned asked quietly. No. I prefer strategy to sport. Jon's voice was neutral. Lord Tywin says hunting is for men who need to prove their dominance over beasts because they can't dominate people. Jon, if something happens today, if things go wrong, I want you to know, Lord Stark, whatever you want to confess, keep it. I'm not interested. Ned's jaw tightened. You're my nephew, my blood, no matter how much you deny it. What matters is what you do with it. You taught me that when you traded me to Tywin. Jon kicked his horse forward, ending the conversation. The hunt continued. They tracked through dense forest, following hounds that had caught the scent of something large. The huntsmen grew excited. Fresh tracks, deep gouges in trees, a boar, a big one. Robert was delighted. Finally, real prey. Everyone spread out. I want the kill shot. The party dispersed as the hounds cornered their quarry in a clearing. Jon positioned himself on the edge, watching, observing, waiting. The boar exploded from the underbrush. It was massive, 400 pounds of muscle and fury, tusks like daggers, eyes red with rage. It saw Robert first. Robert raised his spear, drunk and slow and overconfident. Come on, you ugly bastard. Let's see what you've got. The boar charged. Robert thrust with the spear. The angle was wrong. Too high, too weak. The spear glanced off the boar's shoulder instead of penetrating. The beast hit Robert like a battering ram, tusks driving into his stomach. Robert screamed. Went down, the boar gored him again, twisting, ripping. Guards rushed forward. Spears struck the boar from multiple angles. The animal died in a thrashing heap. But the damage was done. Robert lay in the dirt, his stomach torn open, blood pouring out in impossible amounts. Ned was there instantly, cradling the king's head. "Robert! Robert! Someone get a maester! Now!" Jon dismounted slowly, walked to where Robert lay dying, looked down at the man who would have killed him without hesitation. Robert's eyes found Ned's face. "Ned, my old friend, I'm dying." "No, you'll be fine. We'll get you back to the city. Don't lie. I can feel it. My guts are in the dirt." Robert coughed blood. "Ned, I need to tell you about Joffrey." This was the moment. If Robert confessed about Joffrey's bastardy now, if Ned heard it from the king himself, it would complicate everything. But Robert's words came out garbled, pain-weakened. "Joffrey, you have to protect." "I will. I promise. I'll protect him." Ned's face was anguished. "Robert, please, hold on." "Lyanna," Robert's eyes lost focus. "I'm sorry I couldn't save you." He died. The king of the Seven Kingdoms, dead in the dirt of the Kingswood, killed by a boar while drunk, exactly as Jon had planned. Ned wept. The guards stood in shocked silence. Renly Baratheon looked pale. Jon felt nothing, just cold satisfaction that the first piece had fallen exactly where it needed to. They brought Robert's body back to King's Landing in a wagon. The city erupted in mourning, genuine for some, performative for others. The bells tolled. Black banners flew from the Red Keep. Cersei Lannister moved immediately to crown Joffrey. She called for the small council, demanded they recognize her son as rightful heir. Ned tried to stop her. "Your Grace, we must wait. Discuss succession properly. There are questions." "Questions?" Cersei's voice was sharp. "My son is Robert's heir. There are no questions. The crown passes to Joffrey. That's law. I need to speak with the council, privately, about matters Robert shared with me before he died." "Then speak." But Joffrey will be crowned within the week. The realm needs a king. The small council convened that afternoon. Ned, Tywin, Varys, Littlefinger, Pycelle, and Jon as Tywin's assistant. Ned stood. His face was gray with grief and determination. "Before Robert died, he tried to tell me something about Joffrey. Something important. I believe he was trying to warn me." "Warn you about what?" Littlefinger's tone was carefully neutral. "About Joffrey's parentage." Ned pulled out a book, the lineages Jon Arryn had been researching before his death. Jon Arryn died investigating Robert's children. He found something. I've continued his research, and I've discovered the truth. Cersei went very still. Ned continued. "Every Baratheon union in recorded history produces dark-haired children. The Baratheon bloodline breeds true. Always. Robert had dark hair. His brothers have dark hair. His 16 acknowledged bastards all have dark hair." He looked at Cersei. "But your children have golden hair. Lannister coloring, not a single trace of Baratheon features." "Genetics aren't absolute," Pycelle started. "They are in this case. 300 years of history prove it. When Baratheons marry Lannisters, the children have dark hair. But Joffrey, Myrcella, and Tommen are blonde, which means only one thing. Robert is not their father." The silence was absolute. Cersei's face twisted with rage. "You would dare? You've been committing incest since you were children. Robert's heirs are bastards born of your adultery. They have no claim to the throne." Cersei lunged from her seat. "Guards, arrest Lord Stark for treason." But the guards didn't move. They looked to Tywin. Tywin stood slowly. "Guards, arrest Queen Cersei. Arrest Sir Jaime Lannister. Arrest the royal children, all of them now." Cersei stared at her father in disbelief. "Father, what are you? You've destroyed our house's credibility with your recklessness. Worse, you've given our enemies the perfect weapon against us." Tywin's voice was ice. "Did you truly think I didn't know? I've known for years. I allowed it because it served my purposes. But now those purposes have changed. Guards, do it." Lannister guards, loyal to Tywin, not Cersei, seized the queen. She screamed, fought, cursed her father with words that would make a sailor blush. Jaime Lannister was arrested in the White Sword Tower. He drew his sword, fought briefly but was overwhelmed by numbers. They dragged him to the dungeons in chains. Joffrey, Myrcella, and Tommen were taken from their chambers. The children were terrified, crying for their mother. Ned watched in shock. Tywin, what are you doing? What you should have done from the start, removing the threats to stable succession. Tywin gestured to Jon, which brings us to the real question. Who sits the Iron Throne now? Robert is dead. His heirs are bastards. Stannis and Renly Baratheon are possibilities, but neither is in the capital. We need someone with legitimacy, competence, and immediate availability. What are you proposing? Varys asked, though his smile suggested he already knew. Tywin turned to Jon. Stand up. My name is not Jon Hill. That was a cover identity. My mother was Lyanna Stark. My father was Rhaegar Targaryen. I am Aegon Targaryen, sixth of his name, rightful heir to the Iron Throne. The council chamber erupted, shouting denials, demands for proof. Ned's face went white. Tywin, you swore. I swore to keep him alive. I have. And now I'm putting him where he belongs. Tywin's voice cut through the chaos. Lord Stark, confirm it. You were at the Tower of Joy. You found Lyanna Stark with her newborn son. Tell them. All eyes turned to Ned. Ned looked at Jon, at his nephew, at the boy he'd given to Tywin Lannister 15 years ago, now standing before the small council claiming a throne. It's true, Ned said quietly. Jon is Lyanna's son, Rhaegar's son. I found him at the Tower of Joy. I gave him to Tywin to keep him safe from Robert. You've been lying to the realm for 15 years? Littlefinger's voice was delighted. Oh, this is magnificent. I lied to protect a child from being murdered. Ned's voice strengthened. Robert would have killed him. I couldn't let that happen, so I made a bargain with Tywin, Jon's life for the North's submission. The North's submission? Varys raised an eyebrow. What does that mean? It means House Stark has been in debt to House Lannister for 15 years, a debt we're about to collect. Tywin's smile was glacial. Lord Stark, you will support Jon's claim. You will testify before the assembled lords that he is Rhaegar and Lyanna's legitimate son. You will use your reputation for honor to validate his bloodline. In return, the debt is paid. House Stark is free of Lannister obligation. Ned stared at Tywin with hate and admiration. The old lion had outplayed him completely. And if I refuse, your family will be destroyed. The North will be leaderless. And Jon will take the throne anyway, but without your support. Tywin leaned forward. Choose wisely, Lord Stark. This is your one chance to end this with honor intact. Ned looked at Jon. Is this what you want? To be king? I want to survive. I want power. I want to prevent the realm from tearing itself apart in succession wars. If being king accomplishes that, then yes. Jon's voice was steady. Lord Stark, you can support me or oppose me, but I'm taking the throne either way. The only question is whether you help or hinder. Ned closed his eyes. 15 years. 15 years of guilt, of secret keeping, of hoping Jon would somehow forgive him. And if it all led to this, his nephew using him as a stepping stone to power. I'll support you, Ned said finally. I'll testify. I'll confirm your parentage. But know this, Jon. Aegon, whatever name you take, this isn't what Lyanna wanted. She wanted you safe, not on a throne built on manipulation and lies. Lyanna is dead. Her wants died with her. I'm alive, and I'll do what keeps me that way. Jon's voice was cold. Thank you for your support, Lord Stark. I'll remember it when I'm king. The coronation was held a week later in the Great Sept of Baelor. Every lord of significance in the capital attended. The High Septon presided, though his hand shook as he placed the crown on Jon's head. Ned Stark testified first. He stood before the assembled lords and told the truth. Lyanna Stark and Rhaegar Targaryen had conceived a son. That son was Jon, raised in secret to protect him from Robert's wrath. The child was legitimate, born of love, not rape. It was a beautiful lie mixed with partial truth. The lords murmured, argued, debated. But Ned's reputation for honor carried weight. If Eddard Stark said it was true, most believed it. Howland Reed was brought from the Neck to testify. He confirmed he'd been at the Tower of Joy. He'd witnessed Lyanna's death. He'd seen the infant. The story matched Ned's perfectly. Tywin presented documentation. Letters from Ned to Howland, mentioning a promise to his sister. A silver harp that had belonged to Rhaegar kept at Greywater Watch for 15 years. Testimony from maesters about Targaryen and Stark bloodlines. The evidence was overwhelming. Or at least, overwhelming enough. The lords bent the knee, some eagerly, Tywin's supporters, those who saw opportunity in a young king they could influence, some reluctantly, Baratheon loyalists who had no better option. Some not at all. They were quietly arrested and given the choice: swear or face charges of treason. Jon stood before the Iron Throne, wearing a crown of iron and dragon glass, a blend of Northern and Targaryen symbols. He was 15 years old. He'd killed his first man weeks ago. He'd orchestrated a king's death. He'd blackmailed the master of coin and allied with the spider. And now he was king. The High Septon spoke the words, Aegon of House Targaryen, sixth of his name, king of the Andals, the Rhoynar, and the First Men, lord of the Seven Kingdoms, and protector of the realm. The twisted swords pressed against his back, a reminder that power came from conquest, from blood, from violence. He looked out over the assembled lords and saw calculation in every eye. They were measuring him, testing him, wondering if this boy king could actually rule. His first proclamation, Cersei Lannister and Jaime Lannister are guilty of high treason, adultery, and crimes against the crown. They will be executed. Their children, Joffrey, Myrcella, and Tommen, are hereby declared bastards with no claim to any title. They will be exiled to Essos with enough gold to live comfortably, but never return. The punishment was harsh but measured. Not the mad king's cruelty, practical justice. Second proclamation, Tywin Lannister is confirmed as Hand of the King. Lord Eddard Stark is relieved of his duties and free to return to Winterfell with the gratitude of the crown for his loyal service. He wanted nothing more than to leave this cursed city. Third proclamation, the realm has suffered under corruption and mismanagement. We will conduct full audits of crown finances, reform the city watch, and establish clear laws for succession to prevent future crises. The wars are over, the peace begins, and anyone who threatens that peace will face the Iron Throne's justice. The lords applauded. It was a good speech. Tywin had written most of it. That night, Jon stood on the balcony of the royal chambers, his chambers now, looking out over King's Landing, a city of 500,000 souls, all nominally under his rule. Tywin joined him. Well done today, you handled the coronation perfectly. Firm but not cruel. Decisive but not impulsive. I followed your script, and that's wisdom. Learn from those who know better until you surpass them. Tywin was quiet for a moment. You're 15 years old, the youngest king since Aegon the Conqueror. Do you understand what that means? It means I have enemies everywhere. Lords who think I'm too young, too inexperienced, too much Tywin's puppet. Targaryen loyalists who see me as a usurper. Baratheon supporters who want Stannis or Renly. The list is endless. Yes, but you also have advantages. You're smart. You're trained. You have my support and the Lannister wealth behind you. You have Ned Stark's testimony validating your bloodline. You have Varys providing intelligence and Littlefinger managing finances. Tywin's smile was thin. You have everything you need to succeed. Whether you do is up to you. And when I don't need you anymore, when I've consolidated power and no longer require a hand who taught me everything I know, exile me, maybe even execute me if I become a threat. Tywin's voice was matter-of-fact. I expect nothing less. I've taught you too well to expect loyalty over pragmatism. Just make sure when you strike to kill. Don't leave me wounded and vengeful. I'll remember that. They stood in comfortable silence, master and weapon, teacher and student, the man who'd built an empire, and the boy who would inherit it. There's one more thing, Tywin said. The betrothal. We still need to formalize your marriage alliance? Joy Hill, your niece, you mentioned her years ago. I legitimized her last month. She's 10 years old, intelligent, grateful for her elevation, and absolutely loyal to House Lannister. The marriage will occur when she turns 15. Until then, the betrothal stands as proof of Lannister-Targaryen unity. Tywin's eyes gleamed. Your children will carry Stark, Targaryen, and Lannister blood, the ultimate consolidation of power. And if I refuse, if I want to choose my own queen, you marry for alliances, for bloodlines, for strategic advantage. Love is what you keep in brothels. Tywin's voice hardened. You will marry Joy Lannister, you will produce heirs, and you will ensure the dynasty I've built through you continues for generations. That is not negotiable. Jon met his eyes. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Jon smiled. Of course, Lord Hand, as you say. And that, Tywin realized, meant Jon had learned his final lesson. Never reveal your true intentions until you're ready to act. The student had surpassed the teacher. Epilogue. 7 years later, 305 AC, Jon Targaryen stood atop the wall, looking north into the frozen wasteland beyond. He was 21 now, no longer the boy king, but a man who'd ruled for 6 years with ruthless efficiency. Tywin stood beside him, older but still formidable. "They're coming," Jon said quietly. "The White Walkers, the Night King, everything the old stories warned about. They're real and they're moving south." "I know. Your ravens have been quite insistent." Tywin didn't sound concerned. "Which is why we've spent 6 years preparing. Dragonglass weapons forged by the thousand. The wall reinforced with Lannister gold and northern labor. Every kingdom contributing men and resources instead of fighting each other in pointless wars. Will it be enough? It has to be, because the alternative is extinction." Tywin's voice was pragmatic. "You've done well, Jon. 6 years of peace, no succession wars, no fragmented kingdoms. Just one realm preparing for one enemy. That's more than any king in 300 years accomplished." Jon thought about the journey that had brought him here, the Tower of Joy bargain, the childhood at Casterly Rock, the training, the lessons, the cold pragmatism beaten into him until emotion became weakness and calculation became reflex. He thought about Ned Stark, who'd returned to Winterfell and died 2 years later. Some said of a broken heart, others said of simple age. Jon had sent gold for the funeral, but hadn't attended. What was the point? He thought about Lyanna and Rhaegar, 2 people he'd never known but whose blood defined his existence. Their love, or whatever it had been, had created him. Their deaths had shaped his fate. "Do you ever regret it?" Jon asked. "Taking me from Ned? Raising me as your weapon? Putting me on a throne I never asked for?" Tywin was quiet for a moment. "Regret implies I'd change something if given the chance. I wouldn't. You're my greatest achievement, Jon. Not my son. I already had disappointing sons. But my masterpiece. The perfect synthesis of ruthlessness and legitimacy the King Westeros needed even if it didn't know it." "That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have." Tywin turned to face him. "You asked if I regret it. No. I'm proud of it. Proud of you. You've exceeded every expectation. You've become more than I dared hope. And when the White Walkers come, when the long night falls, you'll lead the realm through it. Because I made you capable of doing what others can't. Making the hard choices. Sacrificing what must be sacrificed. Surviving when survival seems impossible." Jon looked at the man who'd raised him, the man who'd turned a frightened infant into a calculating king, the man who'd given him power at the cost of his soul. "I'll never forgive you for it," Jon said quietly. "For taking a child and turning him into this. For stripping away every soft part until only the cold remained. For making me into you. Resentment makes them strong." Tywin's smile was winter itself. "Hold on to that anger, Jon. Use it. And when I'm gone, when old age finally claims me, remember that I did what was necessary, not what was kind, not what was honorable. What was necessary, I will." They stood together on the wall, the old lion and the young dragon, watching the north for signs of the coming darkness. Far below, Jon's wife, Joy Lannister, now Queen of the 7 Kingdoms, waited with their infant son. Another generation, another piece in the game. The long night was coming. The White Walkers were real. The war for the dawn approached. But Jon Targaryen, raised by wolves and lions, shaped by the coldest mind in Westeros, was ready. He'd paid the price, had sacrificed his soul, his honor, his capacity for love, had become exactly what Tywin intended. A king without weakness, a ruler without mercy, a weapon honed to perfection. And when the darkness came, when the dead walked and the Night King threatened to extinguish all life, that weapon would prove its worth, or die trying. "Come on," Tywin said, turning from the wall. "We have work to do. The Night's Watch needs more dragonglass. The Northern Lords need coordination. The preparations never end." Jon followed him down from the wall. Behind them, the frozen wasteland stretched endlessly north, and in that wasteland blue eyes opened in the darkness. The Night King watched the wall, patient and eternal, waiting for winter to deepen. The Game of Thrones was over. The war for survival was beginning, and Jon Targaryen, the bastard who became a prince, the ward who became a king, the weapon Tywin Lannister forged from a frightened infant, stood ready to face it. Whatever it took, whatever the cost, however dark he had to become. He would survive. he would win. Because Tywin Lannister had spent 15 years making sure failure wasn't in his nature. And that was the only lesson Jon would never forget. Let us know what you'd like to see next. The end.